Welcome to the 700 Club. Burned alive in his own home. That's what happened to a Catholic priest in Nigeria just last week. This past year, Christian persecution around the world has risen to an all-time high.
From Africa to the Middle East and Asia, Christians are being targeted with greater frequency and intensity. Gary Lane brings us the story.
Although fewer Christians died for their faith in Christ last year, Christian persecution is up, increasing to the highest level ever reported. According to Open Doors, a ministry to the persecuted church, 1 in 7 Christians worldwide now experience high levels of persecution or discrimination.
Part of the reason that it's getting worse is because it is getting worse in more places. So particularly this year, we see the spread of violence against Christians in sub-Saharan Africa.
In the 10 countries where Christians experience the most persecution, 7 of them are in countries like Somalia, Sudan, and Eritrea. But this year, North Korea earned the top spot as the worst country offender. In 2020, the communist regime passed a new thought law, increasing punishments for consuming Western radio and TV broadcasts, as well as Christian literature.
In fact, in 2020, with the anti-reactionary thought law that was introduced in North Korea, we see that just legitimizing further and consistent persecution of Christians in that nation. But honestly, it is harder for it to get worse than it is today.
Last year, Afghanistan held the #1 ranking on the Open Doors World Watch list after U.S. troops withdrew from the country in 2021. This year, Afghanistan is ranked #9.
The Christians that remain have gone deep underground, and so there are fewer Christians remaining, and few of them are willing to raise their heads and be seen.
Among other countries of concern, India, China, and Nigeria. That West African country is now ranked at #6. Just last week, assailants set the home of Roman Catholic priest Isaac Ache on fire, burning him to death. President Biden removed Nigeria from the U.S. list of countries of particular concern after the Trump administration gave the country that designation in late 2020.
There is clear evidence that there is persecution of Christians because of their faith. We would urge them to put Nigeria back onto that list of countries of particular concern.
Open Doors is asking that people contact members of Congress about Nigeria and other countries to get involved in helping the persecuted church and to pray daily for suffering Christians worldwide. Gary Lane, CBN News.
Well, as we get closer to the soon return of Jesus, we can expect persecution to increase. It seems like the persecution that was present throughout the world at the dawn of Christianity is coming back and coming back with force. Why? Because our enemy knows his time is very short, and he's trying to quench the gospel and keep the gospel from spreading. In Nigeria, that's primarily coming out of the Muslim community in the northern part of Nigeria, severe persecution for Christians. Nigeria is the most biblically literate country in the entire world. Our studies show they know their Bible, but their government is very resistant to actually enforcing freedom of religion in northern Nigeria for fear of angering the Muslims. We have to act on behalf of our brothers and sisters around the world, and whether that's North Korea, India, China, Middle East, Nigeria, Sub-Saharan Africa, we need to be there for them and let them know that we care, we love them, and we are praying for them. In other news, President Biden is dismissing the discovery of classified documents found at his home and former office, saying, "There's no there." Wendy Griffith has that story and more from the CBN Newsroom. Wendy?
Gordon, yesterday the president spoke publicly on the scandal for the first time since the appointment of his special counsel.
We found a handful of documents were filed in the wrong place. I think you're going to find there's nothing there. I have no regrets. I'm following what the lawyers have told me they want me to do. It's exactly what we're doing. There's no there.
No there. Meanwhile, House Republicans are gearing up to investigate the administration's failure to disclose the discovery of the materials before the midterm elections. The president's attorneys found about 20 classified documents overall, some at his former office last fall, others more recently at his Delaware home. The Supreme Court investigation into who leaked the draft opinion overturning Roe v. Wade failed to find a culprit. The Marshals report released Thursday details lapses in security, but concludes it's not possible to know how reporters got hold of the draft. All 97 people interviewed signed a sworn statement that they did not leak the opinion. The early release last spring put the decision in the public square a month early, sparking protests and scores of attacks against pro-life groups. Yesterday, the FBI announced a $25,000 reward for information in several arsons against crisis pregnancy centers in Oregon. Today is the 50th annual March for Life. Thousands of people will gather in Washington, D.C. for the first march since the High Court struck down Roe. Speakers include Hall of Fame coach Tony Dungy and Jonathan Roumie, the actor who plays Jesus on The Chosen. CBN News will have live coverage from the event. It begins at 12 Eastern, 12 noon on the CBN News Channel and on YouTube. CBN is a sponsor of this year's march. And Gordon, this year, I believe the march is going to be more of a celebration. Of course, they'll still be praying, but it's definitely going to be a celebration of sorts.
And it won't end at the Supreme Court. That's where it has always ended, because the Supreme Court legislated from the bench with Roe versus Wade, created a right that didn't exist in the Constitution, found it in some kind of penumbra, is the wording from Griswold, that there's a shadow from the Constitution establishing a right of privacy. These things have been wiped away by the current Supreme Court. And in that, we now need to go to the legislatures and say, do you believe that babies have a right to live? And how do we hammer out that legislation across 50 states? If you think the battle's over, think again. This is going to be an ongoing struggle in our culture. Here's what I want. I want a culture that honors motherhood, that protects women who want to have their children, and how can we encourage them and stand with them? Having babies is very hard. Ask any mother. And then the journey just begins at birth. And now what do you do? How do you raise that child? How can we all come together and say, yes, we're in favor of motherhood, and we want to help mothers?